Hey there, guys. Short, question answer video. I received this question twice now, once here on YouTube and then again from one of my online coaching clients. It was to do with squats and front squats and just general mobility and what to do. Um, for me, I found the best way to improve mobility on both the front squats and your traditional squat was to simply lighten the load and just practice technique work. Um, Practicing, putting the bar low on your back, push your knees out to the sides when you squat down, holding position on the way down and then the way up, but also taking time to pause at the base of the rep, feel sort of the weight sink, on top of you. Really think about, I'm not going to say so much like opening up the hips and, really pressing the knees hard out to the side, but you want to be able to sit under a light enough weight where you can feel, a good stretch. You can feel, the weight on your back. You can feel it in your shoulders. You get a good idea of how the movement should feel and where you're feeling the tension, whether it's in the joints or sort of more in the mid belly of the muscle. For me, if I felt the movement, say, more in the joints, then I would continue, squatting light, doing mobility work, hitting depth, versus if I felt the tension was like more in the mid belly of the muscle, that's probably when I start to stretch more, because that really is a lot more of the soft tissue, like in the muscle belly, as opposed to your connective tissue and more the tendons and ligaments within the joint. Sometimes also just learning how to hold position with light weight and just letting everything sort of stretch and sit in that position. It will help with, some individuals guard certain movements. It could be due to prior injury. They're really hesitant to, let their letting go of certain muscle tissues holding tension. It becomes more like a neurological thing because you've been injured in the past. So guarding is a real problem that some individuals have, especially with shoulders. If they've damaged their shoulders, teres minor and major may not switch off. The pecs may be overly activated just to help guard that shoulder area and give more stability. And it can take a lot of time just to get that guarding to switch off and feel, secure and comfortable under load. So for me, even when I squat heavy, I go back to doing, technique work for the back offsets. And I try and leave the movement pattern in the way that I found it. So, I always finish a squat session with, light squats and just make sure that they move really well and the weight and the reps, move really, really clean just with a light weight. And taking that same approach, towards the end of the session, if I'm having mobility issues, just, put the weight on my back, it's a light enough load, and I'm just playing around with it, paused squatting. It could be front squat, back squat, purposely moving my knees in and out, so it's just side to side when I'm paused, just to feel where the tension's pulling in the muscle. And I find for me, just having that little bit of extra load makes a big difference. In comparison, like best squat I've put up in comp is 365 kilos, aka 800 pounds. When I do the playing around mobility work, active, stretching, whatever you want to call it, I'm only, squatting 70 kilos. So it's, just one red plate either side. So, the weight really is quite light. I found this probably to be one of the most useful tools when it comes to mobility in general. And sometimes, when you're stretching, you just need a little bit of extra force to help, things progress along comfortably. If I was just to sit in a paused squat position with no weight on my back, I'm not going to feel it really anywhere. I put a little bit of weight and I can sort of feel, things have to fire up and move and hold tension. And then having, a real good look, if you're fortunate enough to be at the gym and there's a mirror and the rest of it, have a look at where you're looking, but also what's the angle of your torso. If you're looking down, you're quite crumpled forward, you got more risk of injury and everything can be sort of all over the place. Versus if you're able to like hit a squat position that's quite upright and you're able to hold that position and pause it, if you can feel the tension evenly in like quads and glutes, Calves to an extent, because, my hamstrings press up against my calf when I'm in a real deep squat position. You sort of know that you're in the right area. If you feel yourself like tipping forward, your hip joints and other things feel tight, or your elbows and shoulders feel tight, well, they're the things that you need to go back and work on. Trying to do it with just a bar, depending on your strength level, for most isn't really a viable option. Some, lighter lifters, especially, if they're not squatting really heavy, then hey, a bar might be adequate. But for me, I found like 70 kilos, preferably for me, 2 plates, works really well. I can get a really good understanding of what is tight, and then I'll go and address that. And a lot of the times, if something is tight, like for an example, if your lower back is tight, it probably isn't your weakness. A lot of the time, if something's really tight, it's generally because it's picking up the slack from muscle groups that just aren't doing their job properly. So we'll use the lower back as, say, a reference point. If my lower back feels tight, and a lot of people confuse it with weak, chances are it's doing a lot more to stabilize my hips when I'm like squatting or deadlifting. And the reality is it's probably the glutes and the hamstrings that aren't firing up properly, and they're not doing their role of, stabilizing the hips, and, moving it correctly under the load. So, if your glutes and hamstrings are under activated, and not doing their job, your lower back's going to pick up the slack. And you got to remember, your lower back, you've got the bar so far, up on your shoulders. If you're leaning forward, you're just a giant lever against yourself. So your lower back's trying to contract isometrically, to an extent concentrically as well. And then it's trying to help, stabilize your hips at the same time. It's not optimal at all. So depending on what is tight, have a look at the other causes that could be, contributing to it. I still find if my lower back feels really, really tight, obviously I'm going to do some mobility work and stretch that one out because I want some relief. But it's looking at why. So look at the other muscle groups that are across on the other joint. Same thing could go, if your shoulders are always sore, have a look at, what's in the neighboring region. Are your pecs not doing their job properly? Is your back not doing its job properly? If you're unsure, just, train it light and see, do you have a big strength deficit in those areas compared to the opposing side? So there's many ways to troubleshoot. Hopefully, this explanation helps give you guys a little bit more insight. But yeah, it's just definitely something that, I get asked, and more so, if I'm coaching people online, when they give me questions like this that make good video topics and aren't necessarily, an easy explanation just in writing, I'll tend to do a video. If you guys have any further questions about this, or even if you're interested in some like online coaching, the rest of it, feel free to comment below. If you guys haven't already, hit like and subscribe, and have a great day wherever you are.